you. Today I am going to address and conceptualize a shift that I see in the production of value in the new economy. And and I am going to use the case of care work to illustrate that. Um, I conducted an interview-based research in Turkey on home-based elder care work and interviewed care providers, elder care receivers, and the adult children of the elderly. Soon after I started the research, I noticed a curious trend actually. There was a widespread emphasis on genuine caring. Both care providers and receivers were constantly talking about the distinction between genuine caring and doing it just for money. Care providers were using it to underline the quality of service they provide, and the receivers were using this to evaluate the success of the care provider, actually. So I noticed that there was a demand for genuine care, and then my research focus has become understanding how care providers could give the impression that actually they were genuinely caring and they were not just doing it for money. More specifically, I wanted to understand, in terms of labor, what it takes for the care provider to be seen as caring. So during the research, I thought at first I would see the impact of emotional labor, right? So the more emotional labor is involved, the more genuine the service will be seen. But the findings were quite surprising for me, actually, because they showed me that even though emotional labor was a part of the story, it wasn't enough to explain the whole story. So I noticed that no matter what type of labor care workers performed, it was seen as caring if they were altering work tasks voluntarily with authentic responses. So it wasn't about what they do actually, but it was about how they do it. So, for instance, I realized that sometimes chopping some vegetables was a sign of genuine care, or mopping the floor. Let's say the care provider doesn't have to cook, right? It is not part of her job. But if she goes and helps the employer, who is mostly the adult daughter of the elderly, uh, her action is seen as a definite sign of caring. Or let's say the care provider is bedridden and the provider should change the diaper 3 times a day. It isn't actually caring when she does change the diaper because it is her job, but it is seen as caring if and when she increases the frequency of diaper changing by her own will without being told to do so. So here the logic is that actually she didn't have to do that. No one asked her to do it, but she did this extra work, so she must really care. And then my first finding is that actually in dealing with routine work tasks, caring, this genuine caring aspect emerges not from extra labor, extra effort per se, but from extra effort that is specifically given voluntarily. So on the more affective and communicative side of the story, I noticed another version of that. I noticed that caring is seen as connected to what extent the care provider is capable to authenticate and personalize standard tasks in surprising and just the right ways, right? So, for instance, one of the most voiced signs of caring was listening interestedly. Okay, I want to underline that part. It is not just listening, the elderly, but it is listening interestedly. So, for me, again, the question became how could someone show that she is actually listening interestedly? And the first thing I noticed was that there was no recipe for that. In some cases, it unfolds as asking the right question. In others, it is more about your mimics. Some underline the importance of showing the right reaction or asking the right question or knowing which topics you should avoid and so on. So there were many ways to show that you are listening interestedly. But one thing was common to all these ways. Listening interestedly actually entailed the care provider to be proactive as opposed to being in the position of a passive recipient. So the care recipient expect the care provider to be someone who can actually turn a monologue into a dialogue. And here the important point is that actually the care provider should figure out what is the right way to say, what is the right way, what is the right thing to do. And it is caring only if she manages to authenticate and personalize her responses just in the right way, right? So this let me see that the types of labor discussion was actually falling short to explain how come care providers could satisfy the demand for genuine care. What makes care providers' work more valuable in the eyes of the employer, it wasn't the type of labor they perform, but the mode of delivery of work. So no matter if she does routine work or perform emotional, cognitive, or communicative labor, her effort is seen valuable only when she delivers the work not as task but as action. So when care providers do something after being asked to do so, employers see that this is her job, this is part of her job. So this is a task, that's why she does that, this is not caring. Then my data actually tells something about both the substance and the style of good care. Production of care, this genuine care that all participants keep underlining, it actually involves routine work as well as relational work, emotional labor, attention to details, soft skills, all of them. However, such concepts individually miss what I have found to be at the heart of the production of caring. That is the appearance of a proactive worker who traverses completion of prescribed tasks with voluntary and authentic responses. So in the emergence of caring as a peculiar good, this thing they keep emphasizing, genuine caring, what is at stake here is not the content of work, but the mode in which actually care providers deliver that work. So it is caring only if the care provider proactively alters prescribed work tasks in ways of their own choosing. So then the data highlight that genuine caring in care work is not just surplus labor, surplus value, but actually it is surplus value that is delivered without being asked in unique, surprising, creative, and unprescribable ways, ways which put her subjectivity, capacity, and capabilities at the center of the production of surplus value. Findings show me that while employers are capable and they could actually easily obtain surplus value by prescribing more work without paying for it, they do not perceive it as valuable as the surplus value generated when care providers willingly and authentically does more work. So to emphasize how proactive workers' mode of delivery of work differs from delivering work as task, I draw from Aristotle and develop concepts of labor as action and labor as task. So the classical distinction between labor and action inherited from Aristotle is a distinction between being compelled to do something and doing something by choice. While action implies an intentional and voluntary activity, labor is a necessity and an enactment of prescribed tasks structured by the will of the master. And here you read this as the will of the employer. So in this framework, while action carries the properties of spontaneity, creativity, uniqueness, labor is actually devoid of them. Labor is actually application of master's desire. So Aristotelian labor in this sense is task completion. Care producing labor, however, diverges from this Aristotelian labor precisely because it goes beyond completing prescribed tasks. And it holds a characteristics of action specifically because the production of care seeks spontaneity, creativity, and uniqueness of action to be incorporated in work. However, it cannot be considered simply as action either because it does not originate from the will of the subject, from the care provider's will to care per se, but instead it is put forward in response to employers' demands for genuine care. In this sense, care producing labor resonates with action, not because it originates from the will of the workers to care, but because how they deliver work is beyond employers' specification. The form, intensity, and frequency of the effort, or what to do and how to do it, is not and cannot be prescribed by the employer. That's why I assert that regardless of what type of labor workers perform, the production of care entails a conflation of labor with action and regards a specific mode of delivery of work that I call labor as action. Lastly, I want to talk about the utility of the concept labor as action in understanding the post-industrial demands on labor. So as we know, one signature characteristic of the new economy is the decline of standard work arrangements and the rise of flexibility and precarious work conditions, right? And another signature is actually the emergence of new labor types. With the rise of service and knowledge economies, we see all these types of labor, emotional, aesthetic, cognitive, or digital forms of labor, they are all becoming more and more in demand. However, beyond this multiplication of forms, recent ethnographic case studies on various post-industrial work scenes suggest another characteristic actually without particularly conceptualizing that. From white-collar jobs to low-paid service work jobs, there is an increasing demand for proactive worker that these studies suggest. This demand for proactive worker unfolds in the demand for workers who know what to do and who can make authentic, creative, and unique contributions to the work. So I suggest this framework of labor as action to account for that pattern. So if we think about it, in manufacturing, the prevailing work command was task prescription. Commands were direct, clear, and mostly repetitive, right? Do this and do this in this way. Hence, such commands actually gave rise to a rich discussion of de-skilling in industrial labor. What I call this mode of delivery of work as labor as task. However, the emphasis on creativity, authenticity, uniqueness, or figuring out what to do, these emphasizes, I argue, signify a shift in the work command from task prescription to a worker who is proactive at work. In the new economy, from white-collar knowledge work to low-paid service work, workers are not only expected to complete imposed work tasks, but also to figure out what to do and how to do it, and make a unique contribution to the work by successfully tailoring their own actions according to the demands of work. So when the work demands becomes being creative, authentic, genuine, and unique at work, what I says actually it is not a demand for a specific type of labor. It cross-cuts different forms of labor, but it is more like a demand for a specific mode of delivery of work. And I think this is a characteristic of the new economy that we neglected to develop conceptual tools to account for it. In post-industrial production, I say labor creates more value if it has been delivered in the mode of labor as action. And I specifically suggest this framework of labor as action to think more on the value of incorporating spontaneity, creativity, and uniqueness of action into work in the new economy. So, yep, that was my presentation. Thank you.